A young woman is sold to a millionaire to save her father, but years later surprises everyone. Before listening to this incredible story, click subscribe to see more exciting stories like this and avoid 10 years of bad luck in love. The morning sun filtered through the silk curtains of Olivia Thompson's bedroom, softly illuminating her face as she slept. Today was her 25th birthday, a date that would normally bring joy and celebration. However, for Olivia, this day marked the beginning of a path she had never chosen. The door burst open, startling her. Her mother, Ellen, entered with a forced smile and a dress in her hands. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," exclaimed Ellen, planting a kiss on her daughter's forehead. "It's time to get up. Today is a big day." Olivia sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. "Thanks, Mom, but you know I don't want to do anything special today." Helen let out an exasperated sigh. "Olivia, we've talked about this. It's not every day you turn a quarter of a century. Besides..." She paused, as if searching for the right words. "Your father and I have a surprise for you." The young woman felt a chill run down her spine. Her parents' surprises were rarely cause for joy for her. What kind of surprise? "You'll see," Ellen replied, spreading the dress out on the bed. It was a beautiful ivory, design with gold details. "Put this on and come down to the garden in an hour. Everyone will be waiting for you." Before Olivia could protest, her mother left the room, leaving her alone with her thoughts and a dress that seemed more like a cage than a celebratory garment. Reluctantly, Olivia got up and approached the mirror. Her reflection showed a beautiful but sad young woman. Her hazel eyes, normally bright and full of life, seemed dull. Today she ran a hand through her long brown hair, wondering what plans her parents had for her this time. As she dressed, her mind wandered to her unfulfilled dreams. She had always wanted to be a writer, to travel the world in search of stories to tell. But in the Thompson family, one of the most influential in the city, individual dreams always took a back seat to family expectations. An hour later, Olivia descended the marble stairs, leading to the mansion's garden. The place was exquisitely decorated with white and gold flowers everywhere. Elegantly arranged tables surrounded a dance floor, and an orchestra played softly in a corner. Her parents were waiting for her at the foot of the stairs. Richard Thompson, her father, an imposing man with graying hair and penetrating eyes, offered her his arm. "You look beautiful, my daughter," he said with a smile that didn't reach. His eyes, "Come, there's someone we want you to meet." Olivia took her father's arm apprehensively, allowing herself to be guided among the guests who were already beginning to murmur and point in her direction. They stopped in front of a young man, perhaps a few years older than her, dressed in an impeccable black suit. "Olivia," Richard announced solemnly, "I'd like you to meet Alexander Pearson, your future husband." The world seemed to stop for Olivia. The voices around her became a distant buzz as she stared incredulously at the man in front of her. Alexander Pearson, with his perfectly combed blonde hair and calculating blue eyes, returned a smile that seemed rehearsed. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Olivia," said Alexander, taking her hand and kissing it softly. "I've heard so much about you." Olivia withdrew her hand as if the contact had burned her. She looked at her parents, searching for some indication that this was a bad taste joke, but the serious expression on their faces confirmed that they were speaking in earnest. "What does this mean?" she managed to ask, her voice barely a whisper. Ellen approached, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Honey, Alexander is the son of our dear friends, the Pearsons. We've been talking for months about uniting our families. It's a wonderful opportunity for everyone." "Opportunity?" Olivia's voice rose, attracting the attention of nearby guests. "How can you decide my future without consulting me?" Richard frowned, moving closer to speak in a low but firm voice. "Olivia, this is neither the time nor the place. Behave yourself and we'll talk later." Trapped between her father's stern gaze and Alexander's condescending smile, Olivia felt like she couldn't breathe. The party, the guests, even the beautiful garden, everything seemed to close in around her. She needed to escape, if only for a moment. "Excuse me," she muttered abruptly, moving away and heading towards the house. As she walked hurriedly, she collided with a young waiter carrying a tray of champagne. The glasses clinked dangerously, but the waiter managed to maintain his balance. "I'm sorry," Olivia apologized, looking up. Her eyes met those of the waiter, a warm, brown tone, looking at her with concern. "Are you all right, miss?" he asked quietly. For a moment, Olivia considered lying, saying everything was fine, as she always did. But something in the young man's sincere gaze made her hesitate. "No," she finally replied, her voice breaking. "I'm not okay." The waiter looked around, making sure no one was watching them. Then, leaning slightly, he whispered, "There's a service door near the kitchen. If you need a moment alone." Olivia nodded, grateful for this act of kindness from a stranger. Without saying more, she headed towards the kitchen, aware that her brief absence would soon be noticed. As she walked away, she couldn't help but look back one last time. The young waiter was still there, watching her with a mixture of concern and something else she couldn't identify. For an instant, their gazes met again, and Olivia felt a strange sensation in her chest, as if something important had just begun. Little did she know that this chance encounter would mark the beginning of a series of events that would change her life forever, challenging everything she thought she knew about love, duty, and destiny. Olivia slipped through the service door, leaving behind the bustle of the party and the oppressive feeling of being under constant scrutiny from her family and guests. The contrast between the luxurious garden and the austere service hallway was striking, but to her, this simple and unpretentious space felt infinitely more welcoming. She walked hurriedly, her heels echoing on the tiled floor, until she found a small break room for the staff. She entered and closed the door behind her, leaning against it as she tried to catch her breath and calm her racing thoughts. "How could they do this to me?" she murmured to herself, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "An arranged marriage, as if we were in the last century." As she struggled to contain her emotions, a soft knock on the door startled her. For a moment, she feared her parents had found her, but then she heard a familiar voice. "Miss, are you in there? Are you all right?" It was the waiter she had bumped into earlier. Olivia hesitated for an instant, but something in the genuine concern in his voice prompted her to open the door. The young man was there, holding a glass of water and looking at her with a mixture of worry and curiosity. "I thought you might need this," he said, offering her the glass. Olivia took it with trembling hands, grateful for the gesture. "Thank you," she murmured, taking a small sip. I'm sorry for invading the staff area." The waiter smiled kindly. "Don't worry about it. Sometimes we all need a place to escape." He paused, as if considering whether he should continue. "My name's Ethan, by the way." "Olivia," she replied, surprised by the ease with which her name left her lips. Without the titles or formalities she was accustomed to, Ethan nodded. "I know it's your birthday, right? Although you don't seem very happy about it." Olivia couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "It's complicated," she said, not knowing why. She felt the need to explain herself to this stranger. "My parents have plans for me that I don't share. Our family expectations," Ethan commented, leaning against the opposite wall. "I know that feeling well." There was a moment of shared silence, a mutual understanding that Olivia had never experienced before. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. "Can I ask you something, Ethan?" she said suddenly, surprising herself. He nodded, encouraging her to continue. "If you could do anything, be whoever you wanted without worrying about what others expect from you, what would you do?" Ethan seemed to reflect for a moment before answering. "I've always dreamed of being a photographer," he said finally. "Capturing moments, telling stories through images, but well, life had other plans." Olivia felt an immediate connection. "I want to be a writer," she confessed. "To travel, experience life, put all that into words, but for my family, that's nothing more than a silly hobby." "I don't think it's silly at all," Ethan said sincerely. "In fact, I think it's beautiful." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the outside world ceased to exist. Olivia felt something she had never experienced before, a spark, a connection that went beyond words. The moment was interrupted by the sound of voices. Approaching Olivia tensed, knowing that her absence must have been noticed by now. "I have to go back," she said regretfully. "But thank you, Ethan, for listening, for understanding." Ethan nodded, an idea forming in his mind. "Wait," he said quickly. "If you ever need to escape for real, even if just for a few hours." He scribbled something on a napkin and handed it to her. "This is my number and the address of a small cafe downtown. It's quiet. No one would bother you there." Olivia took the napkin, feeling as if she were receiving much more than just information. "Thank you," she whispered, carefully tucking it into her dress. With one last look and a shared smile, Olivia headed back to the party, feeling inexplicably lighter. As she walked, her fingers brushed against the hidden napkin, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something akin to hope. Back in the garden, the party continued as if nothing had happened. Olivia slipped among the guests, looking for her parents. She found them near the dance floor, animatedly conversing with the Pearsons. "Ah, here you are, dear," Ellen said upon seeing her, her tone mixing relief and reproach. "We were worried. I'm sorry," Olivia murmured, forcing a smile. "I needed a moment to freshen up." Alexander approached, offering her a glass of champagne. "I hope you're feeling better," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "What do you say we dance? It is your party after all." Before Olivia could respond, her father intervened. "Excellent idea. The first of many dances, I'm sure." With no other option, Olivia allowed Alexander to lead her to the dance floor. As they moved to the rhythm of the music, she couldn't stop thinking about Ethan, about the connection they had shared in those brief moments. "I hope the surprise didn't upset you," Alexander said, interrupting her thoughts. "I know it's unconventional, but our families believe we'll make an excellent couple." Olivia looked at him, trying to see beyond the perfect facade. "And what do you think, Alexander? Do you really want this?" For a moment she thought she saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes, but it disappeared so quickly that Olivia wondered if she had imagined it. "Of course I want this," Alexander replied with a certainty that sounded rehearsed. "Our families are right together. We could achieve great things." Olivia felt a pang of disappointment. Not that she expected Alexander to oppose the idea, but a part of her had harbored hope of finding an ally in him. "What about love?" she asked quietly, aware of the guests' gazes upon them. "Don't you think we should have the chance to fall in love?" Alexander let out a soft laugh, as if Olivia had said something naive. "Love is for novels, Olivia. In our world, alliances and power are what really matter. Love, if it comes, will be a bonus." The music ended, and Olivia separated from Alexander, feeling more trapped than ever. As the guests applauded, she searched for Ethan among the service staff, needing to see a friendly face. She found him near one of the tables, serving drinks. Their gazes crossed for an instant, and Olivia felt a warmth in her chest that strongly contrasted with the coldness she had experienced in Alexander's arms. The rest of the party passed like a blurry dream for Olivia. Forced smiles, superficial conversations, and plans for the future in which she had no voice or vote. When the last guest finally left, Olivia felt physically and emotionally exhausted. "It's been a wonderful day," Ellen declared, as the family gathered in the mansion's main living room. "Everyone is delighted with the engagement." "Alexander is a good match," Richard added, pouring himself a whiskey. "The Pearsons have connections that will be very useful to us in the coming years." Olivia, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "What about what I want? Don't I have a say in this?" Her parents exchanged exasperated looks. "Olivia," her father began in a stern tone, "we've talked about this. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the good of the family." "Sacrifices?" Olivia felt the frustration accumulated over years finally exploding. "You call handing me over as if I were a commodity a sacrifice? Denying me the opportunity to live my own life, to pursue my dreams?" "Enough!" Richard's voice resonated in the room. "Don't be ungrateful. We've given you everything, and this is the least you can do to repay it." Olivia looked at her mother, seeking support, but Ellen only averted her gaze. "Your father is right, honey," she said softly. "It's best for everyone." Feeling betrayed and alone, Olivia headed to her room, closing the door behind her. She collapsed onto the bed, the tears she had held back all day finally flowing freely as she cried. Her hand brushed against something in her dress pocket. She pulled out the napkin Ethan had given her, looking at the scribbled address. At that moment she made a decision. With quick and silent movements, Olivia changed her elegant dress for more comfortable and practical clothes. She took a small backpack and stuffed it with some clothes, her diary, and the savings she had been secretly keeping for years. Before leaving, she took one last look at the room that had been her refuge and her prison for so long. Then, with her heart pounding loudly, she slipped down the hallway and down the stairs, grateful that her parents had already retired to sleep. The night was cool and dark when Olivia left the mansion. For a moment, fear threatened to paralyze her. She had never been alone in the city at this hour, but the memory of Ethan's warm smile and the promise of freedom propelled her forward. She walked quickly through the streets, moving away from the luxurious neighborhood where she had grown up. As she advanced, the buildings became more modest, the streets narrower. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she found the address she was looking for. The cafe was small and cozy, with dim lights shining through the windows. Olivia hesitated for a moment before entering, the tinkling of the bell above the door announcing her arrival. The place was almost empty at this hour. Behind the counter, an older man looked up from a book he was reading. His eyes opened with surprise at seeing Olivia. "Can I help you, young lady?" he asked kindly. Olivia opened her mouth to respond, but the words got stuck in her throat. What was she doing? Had she lost her mind? Just as she was considering turning around and going back home, a familiar voice startled her. "Olivia?" She turned to see Ethan emerging from the kitchen wearing an apron and a look of astonishment on his face. "Ethan," she managed to say, her voice barely a whisper, I didn't know where else to go." Ethan's face softened with understanding. He approached her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe here." And for the first time in what seemed like an eternity, Olivia truly believed it. The light of dawn filtered through the worn curtains when Olivia opened her eyes. For a moment, disorientation overwhelmed her, as she didn't recognize the small and modest bedroom she was in. Then, the memories of the previous night hit her like a wave. The party, the forced engagement, her desperate escape. She slowly sat up, observing the room in more detail. It was small but cozy, with walls covered in black and white photographs that captured scenes of everyday life in the city. In a corner, an old camera rested on a cluttered desk. The sound of movement in the adjoining room alerted her. Olivia got up, smoothing her wrinkled clothes, and headed towards the door. As she opened it, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee greeted her. Ethan was in the small kitchen, with his back to her, preparing breakfast. Hearing the door, he turned with a warm smile. "Good morning," he said, offering her a cup of coffee. "I hope you were able to get some rest." Olivia took the cup, grateful for the gesture and the warmth it emanated. "Thank you," she murmured, "for everything. I don't know what I would have done if—" "You don't have to thank me," Ethan interrupted her gently. "Anyone would have done the same." But Olivia knew that wasn't true in the world she had grown up in. Selfless compassion was a rarity. They sat at the small kitchen table, a comfortable silence between them, as they had breakfast. Finally, Ethan spoke. "Do you want to talk about what happened last night?" Olivia sighed, setting her cup on the table. "It's a long story." "I have time," Ethan replied with an encouraging smile. And so, Olivia began to speak. She told him about the constant pressure from her family, the crushing expectations, the arranged engagement. Ethan listened attentively, without judging, offering words of support when she paused to hold back tears. "I can't go back," Olivia concluded, her voice barely a whisper. "I can't live the life they want for me." Ethan nodded understandingly. "And what do you want to do now?" The question took her by surprise. It was the first time anyone had asked her what she wanted, without expectations or pressure. I don't know," she admitted. I've never really had the opportunity to think about it." "Well," Ethan said, standing up and extending his hand. To her, "What do you say we start by exploring a bit? I know a place that might inspire you." Olivia hesitated for a moment, but the idea of discovering the city, of seeing the world through different eyes, was too tempting. She took Ethan's hand and stood up. They left the small apartment and immersed themselves in the bustling city streets. For Olivia, it was like seeing everything for the first time. The street vendors, the children, playing on the sidewalks, the elderly, chatting on park benches. Everything had a vitality and authenticity she had never experienced in her world of luxury and appearances. Ethan guided her through narrow alleys and hidden squares, sharing stories and anecdotes about each place Olivia found, herself laughing more than she had in years, feeling light and free. Finally, they arrived at an old brick building. Ethan led her up some stairs until they reached the rooftop. The view that greeted them took Olivia's breath away. The city stretched out before them, a mix of old and new, of luxury and simplicity. "This is my secret place," Ethan said, taking out his camera. "I come here when I need inspiration or just a moment of peace." Olivia watched, fascinated, as Ethan captured images of the city, his passion evident in every movement. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "You know, I think you'd be an excellent writer," Ethan commented, lowering his camera. "You have a unique perspective, Olivia. You see things that others overlook." His words touched something deep within her. For the first time, Olivia allowed herself to imagine a different life, a life where she could pursue her dreams without fear. The day flew by amidst laughter, deep conversations and discoveries. When they returned to Ethan's apartment at nightfall, Olivia felt transformed. "Thank you for today," she said, sitting on the small couch. "I can't remember the last time I felt so alive." Ethan sat next to her, his closeness sending a tingle through Olivia's skin. "I'm glad," he responded softly. "Everyone deserves the chance to be who they truly are." Their gazes met, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. Olivia felt an irresistible urge to lean in, to close the distance between them. The shrill sound of her phone broke the moment Olivia took it out of her bag, her heart racing fast as she saw her mother's name on the screen. "It's my mother," she said, panic evident in her voice. "They must have noticed I left." Ethan placed a comforting hand on hers. "You don't have to answer if you don't want to." Olivia looked at the phone, then at Ethan, and made a decision. She turned off the device and put it away. "I'm not ready to face them," she said. "Not yet." Ethan nodded understandingly. "You can stay here as long as you need," he offered. "It's small, but it's perfect." Olivia interrupted him with a grateful smile. That night, lying in the borrowed bed, Olivia reflected on the turns her life had taken in just 24 hours. The fear and uncertainty were still there, but for the first time in a long time, she also felt hope. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to dream of a different future, a future where she was free to choose her own path. But while Olivia was finding a new sense of freedom in the Thompson mansion, the storm was just beginning to form. The Thompson mansion, normally a bastion of calm and order, had become a hive of activity and tension. Richard Thompson paced back and forth in his study, his brow furrowed and fists clenched, while Ellen tried, unsuccessfully, to communicate with Olivia for the umpteenth time. "Nothing!" Ellen exclaimed, dropping the phone on the desk. "Her cell phone is still turned off. Where could she be?" Richard stopped, looking out the window at the impeccably manicured gardens. "This is unacceptable," he growled. "Does she have any idea what's at stake, the scandal this could cause?" Ellen approached her husband, placing a hand on his shoulder in an attempt to calm him. "Richard, maybe we should—" But before she could finish, the study door burst open. Alexander Pearson entered, his usual composure, replaced by an expression of concern and irritation. "Any news?" he asked without preamble. Richard shook his head. "Nothing yet, but don't worry, we'll find her." Alexander ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that betrayed his nervousness. "This can't become public knowledge," he said, his voice tense. "The official announcement of the engagement is scheduled for next week. if the press finds out that the bride has disappeared. It won't come to that, Richard interrupted firmly. I know my daughter. She's having a tantrum, nothing more. She'll come back when she realizes how absurd her behavior is. Ellen, however, didn't seem so sure. Richard, she said softly, maybe we should consider that Olivia really doesn't want this. Perhaps if we talked to her, found a compromise. A compromise? Richard's voice rose, making Ellen instinctively step back. There's no room for compromises here, Ellen. Too much depends on this union. Alexander observed the exchange with interest, his calculating eyes moving between the couple. If I may, he intervened in a soft voice. I think I can help locate Olivia. Both Thompsons turned to him, hope and suspicion mixing in. Their expressions, how? Richard asked. Alexander smiled, a gesture that didn't reach his eyes. I have contacts, resources that can be useful in situations like this, but I need your authorization to use them. Richard and Ellen exchanged glances. There was something in the way Alexander spoke that caused them unease, but the desperation to find their daughter outweighed any doubt. Do whatever is necessary, Richard finally said. Alexander nodded, taking out his phone. Excellent. I'll contact my associates immediately. I assure you we'll find Olivia very soon. As Alexander left the room to make his calls, Ellen turned to her husband, concern evident on her face. Richard, are you sure about this? There's something about Alexander that doesn't sit right with me. Richard sighed, sitting heavily in his armchair. For a moment, the powerful patriarch of the Thompsons seemed to age. 10 years. We don't have a choice, Ellen, he said quietly. If we don't find Olivia soon, everything we've worked for will come crashing down. Ellen approached, kneeling next to her husband. What do you mean? Richard, what's really going on? Richard closed his eyes, as if the weight of a long-kept secret was finally crushing him. There are things you don't know, Ellen, he began. Things I've done to keep this family on top. Richard, you're scaring me, Ellen said, taking her husband's hands in hers. He opened his eyes, looking at her with a mixture of guilt and determination. Years ago, when the company was on the brink of bankruptcy, I made deals agreements with people who shouldn't be challenged. What kind of agreements? Ellen asked, though a part of her feared the answer. The kind of agreements that bind you for life, Richard replied. The Pearsons, they're not just business partners. They're our protectors, our jailers. This marriage isn't just a business alliance. It's the payment of a debt. Ellen stood up, stepping back in horror. Are you saying you sold our daughter's future to save your company? Richard stood up, trying to approach his wife. I did it for us, for our family. Do you think I wanted this? But we had no choice if we don't fulfill our part of the deal. What, Richard? Ellen pressed. What will happen? We'll lose everything, Richard said, his voice barely a whisper. And when I say everything, I mean everything, Ellen. Our fortune, our position, even our freedom could be at stake. The silence that followed this revelation was deafening. Ellen looked at her husband as if seeing him for the first time, decades of lies and secrets crumbling between them. Oh my God, she finally murmured. What have you gotten us into, Richard? Before Richard could respond, Alexander re-entered the room, a triumphant smile on his face. I have good news, he announced. My contacts have located Olivia. She's in the city center, in a working-class neighborhood. Richard quickly composed himself, his mask of control back in place. Excellent. We'll go get her immediately. But Alexander raised a hand, stopping him. With all due respect, Mr. Thompson, I think it would be better if I handled this personally. After all, I am her fiancé. I can convince her to return voluntarily, without causing a scene. Richard hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded. All right, bring her back, Alexander, and remind her what's at stake. Alexander smiled, an expression that sent chills down Ellen's spine. Don't worry, Mr. Thompson. I'll make sure Olivia understands her situation. Perfectly. As Alexander left the mansion, Ellen turned to her husband, tears shining in her eyes. What have we done, Richard? She whispered. What kind of monsters have we become? Richard didn't respond, his gaze lost in the distance. The empire he had built, the legacy he had wanted to leave, now felt like a golden cage, trapping not only him, but everyone he loved. Meanwhile, in Ethan's modest apartment, Olivia woke up with a smile, oblivious to the storm that was approaching. For the first time in years, she felt truly free, not knowing that her newly discovered freedom was about to be brutally challenged. The morning in Ethan's small apartment began with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the soft sound of classical music. Olivia stretched slowly, a smile forming on her lips as she remembered where she was. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine that this could be her life, waking up each day in a simple but warm place, far from the pressures and expectations that had defined her existence until now. She got up and headed to the kitchen, where she found Ethan preparing breakfast. He greeted her with a smile that made her heart skip a beat. "Good morning," he said, offering her a cup of coffee. "Did you sleep well?" Olivia nodded, taking the cup gratefully. "Better than I have in years, actually. Thank you for all of this." Ethan shrugged, a gesture that conveyed both modesty and understanding. "You don't have to thank me. Everyone deserves a safe place." They sat down to have breakfast, the conversation flowing easily between them. Olivia was surprised at how comfortable she felt, how natural all of this seemed. "So," Ethan said after a moment, "have you thought about what you want to do now?" The question made Olivia pause. In the excitement of her escape and the novelty of her new freedom, she hadn't really considered her next steps. I'm not sure," she admitted. "Part of me wants to stay here forever, hidden from the world, but I know I can't do that." Ethan nodded understandingly. "Well, what do you say we start with something small? I know a place that might inspire you." Intrigued, Olivia accepted. After cleaning up the breakfast dishes, they left the apartment and immersed themselves in the bustling city streets. Ethan guided her through alleys and passages that Olivia would never have discovered on her own. Finally, they arrived at a small brick building with a worn sign that read, "Community Library." Upon entering, Olivia was greeted by the smell of old books and the welcoming silence that only a library can offer. Ethan led her to a section in the back, where an older woman was organizing books on a shelf. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter," Ethan greeted. The woman turned, a smile lighting up her wrinkled face. "Ethan, how lovely to see you. And who is this charming young lady?" "This is Olivia," Ethan introduced. "She's a friend who's looking for her way." Mrs. Carter's eyes sparkled with understanding. "Ah, looking for the way we all do that, dear. Welcome to our little sanctuary." Olivia instantly felt at ease with the elderly woman. There was a warmth in her gaze that reminded her of the grandmother she had lost years ago. "Mrs. Carter runs this place," Ethan explained. "It's not just a library, but also a community center. They give literacy classes here, organize book clubs. And sometimes," Mrs. Carter interrupted with a wink, "we discover new talents. Ethan tells me you like to write, Olivia." Olivia blushed slightly. "Well, yes, but—" "No buts," Mrs. Carter said. Firmly, art is for sharing, for inspiring. "How about joining our writing workshop? It's this afternoon." Before Olivia could respond, the library door burst open. Everyone turned to see who had entered, and Olivia's heart stopped for a moment. There, standing in the doorway, was Alexander Pearson. "Olivia," he said, his voice cold and controlled, "I've finally found you." Ethan instinctively moved, placing himself between Olivia and Alexander. "Who are you?" he asked, his tone defiant. Alexander ignored him, his eyes fixed on Olivia. "It's time to go home. Your parents are worried." Olivia felt fear and anger mixing inside her. "I'm not going anywhere with you, Alexander. I've made my decision." Alexander took a step forward, his mask of courtesy slipping to reveal something more sinister underneath. "I'm afraid you don't have a choice, dear. There's a lot at stake. Here, more than you can imagine." Mrs. Carter, sensing the tension, intervened. "Young man, this is a public library. If the lady doesn't want to leave with you, you can't force her." Alexander turned to the elderly woman, a cold smile on his lips. "With all due respect, madam, this is a family matter. I suggest you stay out of it." "Don't talk to her like that," Ethan snapped, stepping forward. The situation was escalating quickly. Olivia could feel the tension in the air, thick and dangerous. She knew she had to do something before things got out of control. "All right," she finally said, her voice shaky but determined. "I'll talk to you, Alexander, but here, now." Alexander seemed to consider the offer for a moment before, nodding fine but alone. Ethan began to protest, but Olivia stopped him with a hand on his arm. "I'll be fine," she assured him, though she wasn't. Sure, she believed it herself. As Ethan and Mrs. Carter reluctantly retreated to another section of the library, Olivia faced Alexander. "What's really going on, Alexander? Why is this marriage so important?" Alexander looked at her for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. Finally, he let out a sigh. "Your father is in trouble, Olivia. Serious trouble. This marriage, it's more than a business alliance. It's his salvation." Olivia felt the ground moving beneath her feet. "What do you mean?" "Your father made deals with dangerous people," Alexander continued, his voice low and urgent. "People who don't take no for an answer. If we don't go through with this agreement, your family will lose everything. And when I say everything, I mean much more than just money or status." The horror of realization settled in Olivia's stomach like a cold weight. "You're saying that?" "I'm saying that if you don't come back with me now, if we don't go ahead with this marriage, the consequences will be devastating," Alexander concluded, "not just for your father, but for your entire family. Even for you." Olivia staggered, leaning against a bookshelf to keep herself upright. Everything she thought she knew, everything she had been fighting to escape, suddenly took on a much darker and more dangerous meaning. "Why?" she whispered, tears threatening to fall. "Why would my father do something like this?" Alexander moved closer, his voice softening, for the first time. "For the same reason he does everything. For your family. He thought he was securing your future, everyone's future." Olivia closed her eyes, trying to process all this information. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Anger towards her father for putting them in this situation, fear of the consequences, and a deep sadness for the freedom that now seemed further away than ever. "And you?" she finally asked, opening her eyes to look at Alexander. "What's your role in all of this?" Alexander looked away for a moment, and Olivia thought she saw a flash of vulnerability in his eyes. "My family has its own secrets, its own debts. This marriage is as crucial for us as it is for the Thompsons." For a moment, Olivia felt a pang of empathy towards Alexander. Perhaps he too was a piece in a game he hadn't chosen to play. "There must be another way," Olivia said, more to herself than to Alexander. "We can't just—" "There isn't," Alexander interrupted, his tone becoming firm again. "Believe me, I've looked for alternatives, but this is the only path that will keep us all safe." Olivia felt the weight of the world falling on her shoulders. The walls of the library, which moments ago had seemed welcoming, now felt suffocating. "I need time," she finally said, "to think, to process all of this." Alexander nodded, though it was evident he wasn't completely satisfied with the response. "You have until noon tomorrow. After that, I'll have to take more drastic measures." With those words, Alexander turned and left the library, leaving Olivia trembling and confused. Ethan and Mrs. Carter approached immediately. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked, concern evident in his voice. Olivia nodded weakly, though she was far from feeling okay. "I need some air," she murmured. Mrs. Carter squeezed her hand affectionately. "Go, dear. But remember, there are always options, even when we can't. See them." Ethan accompanied Olivia out of the library. They walked in silence for a while until they reached a small park. They sat on a bench, the cool breeze helping to calm Olivia's nerves. "Do you want to talk about it?" Ethan asked softly. Olivia let out a shaky sigh. "It's complicated. Very complicated." "Complicated things are usually easier to handle when we share them," Ethan said, offering her an encouraging smile. And so Olivia began to talk. She told Ethan everything Alexander had revealed to her. Her father's dark deals, the veiled threats, the marriage as the only way out. As she spoke, the tears she had been holding back finally began to fall. Ethan listened in silence, offering his presence as an anchor in the midst of Olivia's emotional storm. When she finished, he remained quiet for a moment, processing all the information. "Olivia," he finally said, gently taking her hand, "I know it seems like you don't have options, but there are always alternatives. You don't have to sacrifice your happiness for others' mistakes." "But how can I turn my back on my family?" Olivia asked, her voice broken. "If I don't do this, they could lose everything. They could be in danger." Ethan squeezed her hand. "I understand you want to protect them, but at what cost? Is it worth living a life of unhappiness?" Olivia fell silent, reflecting on his words. On one hand, there was the duty to her family, the need to protect them from the consequences of her father's actions. On the other hand, there was the yearning for freedom, to live an authentic life, to pursue her dreams. "I don't know what to do," she finally admitted. "You don't have to decide right this minute," Ethan said softly, "but I want you to know that, whatever happens, you're not alone. I'll be here to support you, whatever your decision may be." Olivia looked at him, feeling a wave of gratitude and something more. Something she didn't dare name yet. "Thank you, Ethan. I don't know what I'd do without you." They stayed in the park for a while longer, the silence between them, comfortable despite the gravity of the situation. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Olivia made a decision. "I need to talk to my parents," she said. "Face to face, I need to hear the truth from them." Ethan nodded. "Do you want me to come with you?" Olivia considered the offer for a moment. Part of her wanted the safety and support that Ethan provided, but another part knew that this was something she had to face alone. "Thank you, but I think it's something I have to do on my own," she replied. "I understand," Ethan said, "but promise me you'll be careful and that you'll call me if you need anything. Anything at all." Olivia nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. "I promise." They stood up from the bench, and for a moment they stood looking at each other. There was so much Olivia wanted to say, so much she wanted to do, but time seemed to have stopped. Finally, on an impulse, she moved closer and hugged Ethan tightly. He returned the hug, and for a moment, Olivia allowed herself to imagine a different future, a future where she could freely choose who to love. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. When they separated, Olivia saw in Ethan's eyes the reflection of her own feelings, hope, fear, and a budding love they didn't yet dare to name. "I'll be waiting for your call," Ethan said. With one last exchange of glances, Olivia turned and began walking towards her old life, towards the confrontation that could change everything. As she walked away, she felt as if she were walking on the edge of a knife, with her family's fate and her own future hanging by a thread. What she didn't know was that at that very moment, other forces were in motion. Forces that would soon turn her personal dilemma into something much bigger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The sun was setting over the city when Olivia arrived at the gates of the Thompson mansion. She paused for a moment, observing the imposing structure she once called home. Now, with everything she knew, the place seemed more like a prison than a refuge. She took a deep breath, gathering all her determination, and pressed the buzzer. Seconds later, the surprised voice of the butler sounded through the intercom. "Miss Olivia, thank God, your parents have been very worried." The gates opened, and Olivia advanced up the driveway, each step resonating with the weight of the decisions that were to come. Before she could reach the main door, it burst open, and Ellen Thompson ran out. "Olivia," she exclaimed, enveloping her daughter in a desperate embrace. "My child, we were so worried. Where have you been? Are you all right?" Olivia tensed in the embrace, conflicting emotions battling within her. On one hand, her mother's love and concern were evident. On the other, the feeling of betrayal from the secrets and lies still burned in her chest. "I'm fine, Mom," she said, gently pulling away. "I need to talk to Dad and you. It's important." Ellen nodded, worry still visible in her eyes. "Of course, honey, your father is in his study. Let's go." As she followed her mother through the familiar hallways of the mansion, Olivia couldn't help but notice how everything seemed different now. The expensive paintings, the luxurious furniture, everything that once represented safety and comfort now seemed like a facade, hiding dark and dangerous secrets. They reached Richard Thompson's study, and Ellen knocked softly on the door before opening it. "Richard, Olivia is here." Richard Thompson rose from his desk, a mixture of relief and apprehension on his face. "Olivia, thank God you're okay. We were very worried about you." Olivia entered the room, maintaining distance between herself and her parents. "I'm fine," she said, her voice firm, "but I think we have a lot to talk about." Richard and Ellen exchanged glances, the tension palpable in the air. "Of course," said Richard, gesturing to the armchairs. "Please sit down." Olivia shook her head. "I prefer to stand, Dad. Mom, I need you to tell me the truth. The whole truth about the deals you made, about the dangers we face, about this arranged marriage, everything." The color drained from Richard's face, while Ellen stifled a gasp of surprise. How do you know about that?" Richard asked, his voice barely a whisper. "That doesn't matter," Olivia replied. "What matters is that I want to hear it from you." Now, Richard collapsed heavily into his armchair, suddenly seeming years older. Ellen approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder in support. "You're right," Richard began, his voice tired. "You deserve the truth. It all started years ago when the company was on the brink of bankruptcy." For the next hour, Richard Thompson unraveled a story of ambition, desperation, and fateful decisions. He spoke of how in a moment of weakness, he had accepted money and support from powerful and dangerous individuals. How, little by little, he had found himself trapped in a web of favors and veiled threats. "The marriage to Alexander," he continued, "is not just a business alliance. It's our only way out. The Pearsons have the necessary influence to protect us, to settle our debts." Olivia listened to everything in silence, her heart sinking more and more with each revelation. When Richard finished, the silence in the room was deafening. "And you?" Olivia finally asked, turning to her mother. "Did you know all of this?" Ellen, with tears in her eyes, shook her head. "Not everything. I suspected something wasn't right, but I never imagined it was this serious." Olivia closed her eyes, trying to process it all. When she opened them again, her gaze was filled with a mixture of pain and determination. "How could you?" she asked, her voice breaking. "How could you put us in danger like this? How could you be willing to sell my future to fix your mistakes?" Richard stood up, trying to approach his daughter. "Olivia, everything I've done, I did for this family, to secure your future, to—" "No," Olivia interrupted, stepping back. "Don't you dare say you did it for me. This isn't about my future or my well-being. This is about your ego, your inability to accept failure." "Olivia, please," Ellen intervened, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I know this is difficult to understand, but your father only wanted the best for us." "The best?" Olivia let out a bitter laugh. "How can tying us to dangerous people be the best? How can forcing me into a loveless marriage be the best?" Richard stepped forward, his face a mask of desperation. "Daughter, please, you have to understand, if we don't go through with this, we'll lose everything. Not just our money or position. Our lives could be in danger." Olivia was silent for a moment, the weight of the situation falling on her like a slab. Finally, she spoke, her voice low but firm. "I understand the gravity of the situation, Dad. But I can't. I won't sacrifice my life, my happiness for your mistakes. There must be another way." "There isn't," Richard said, his voice breaking. "Believe me, I've looked for alternatives, but this is the only path that will keep us safe." Olivia looked at her parents, the pain and disappointment evident in her eyes. "I need time," she finally said. "Time to think, to process all of this." Ellen stepped forward, extending a hand towards her daughter. "Please, Olivia, stay here. We can talk more, find a solution together." But Olivia shook her head. "I can't stay here. Not now. I need space to think, to decide what to do." "Olivia, please," Richard pleaded, fear evident in his voice. "It's not safe for you to be alone. If our associates find out you're resisting this agreement—" "Are you threatening me, Dad?" Olivia asked, her voice cold. Richard paled. "No, of course not. I'm trying to protect you." "You've done enough," Olivia replied. She headed towards the door, but before leaving, she turned one last time. "I'll let you know my decision soon, but I want you to understand something. Whatever happens, it will be my choice, not yours." With those words, Olivia left the study, leaving her parents in a silence laden with guilt and fear. As she walked through the halls of the mansion, Olivia felt as if the weight of the world was on her shoulders. Each step was a reminder of the life she was leaving behind and the difficult decisions she had ahead. Upon reaching the main door, she found herself face to face with Alexander, who seemed to be waiting for her. "Olivia," he said, his voice soft but firm, "I hope you've had time to reconsider things." She looked at him, trying to see beyond the facade of the perfect fiancé. "Did you know all of this from the beginning? About my father's deals, the dangers?" Alexander nodded slowly. "Yes, I knew my family were as trapped in this as yours." For a moment, Olivia felt a pang of empathy towards him. Perhaps Alexander was also a victim in all of this, but she quickly pushed that thought aside. She couldn't afford to trust anyone now. "I need more time," she finally said. Alexander frowned. "Time is running out, Olivia. We can't keep postponing the inevitable." "I'm not postponing anything," she replied, her voice taking on a steel edge. "I'm taking control of my life, and if that means facing the consequences of my father's actions, so be it." With that, Olivia walked past Alexander and left the mansion, ignoring his calls behind. Her night had fallen completely over the city when Olivia finally stopped. Realizing she had been walking aimlessly for hours, she found herself in a small park, the same one where she had talked with Ethan earlier that day. It seemed like an eternity had passed since then. She sat on a bench, taking out her phone. She had dozens of missed calls and messages, most from her parents and Alexander. But there was one message that stood out among all the others. "I'm here if you need me. Always, Ethan." Olivia felt tears beginning to form in her eyes. Amidst all this chaos, Ethan had become her anchor, the only person she felt she could trust completely. With trembling hands, she dialed his number. "Olivia?" Ethan's voice sounded worried. "Are you okay? What happened?" "Ethan," she said, her voice breaking. I don't know what to do. Everything is a mess." "Where are you?" he asked. "I'm coming right now." Olivia gave him her location, and minutes later, she saw Ethan running towards her. Without saying a word, he wrapped her in an embrace, and Olivia finally allowed herself to break down, sobbing into his shoulder. Ethan held her in silence, gently rubbing her back, offering her the comfort she so desperately needed. When Olivia's sobs finally calmed, he pulled away slightly to look into her eyes. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked softly. Olivia nodded and, little by little, began to tell him everything she had discovered: her father's dark deals, the veiled threats, the marriage as the only apparent way out. Ethan listened in silence, his face a mixture of concern and determination. "Olivia," he said when she finished, taking her hands in his, "I know it seems like you don't have options, but there are always alternatives. You don't have to sacrifice your happiness for others' mistakes. But what if by not doing it I put my family in danger?" she asked, fear evident in her voice. Ethan was silent, for a moment thoughtful. Maybe there's a way to approach this that doesn't involve you sacrificing yourself. If we could expose the illegal deals, if we could get evidence." Olivia looked at him, a spark of hope lighting up in her eyes. "Do you think that's possible?" "It won't be easy," Ethan warned, "and it could be dangerous, but if we're in this together, I think we can find a solution." Olivia felt her heart racing, not only because of the possibility of a way out, but because of the way Ethan had said "together." For the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. "Would you help me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, even knowing how dangerous it could be. Ethan smiled at her, a smile that lit up the night. "Olivia, I'd do anything for you. We're in this together, no matter what happens." At that moment, under the dim light of the park lamps, Olivia made two crucial decisions. The first, she would not marry Alexander regardless of the consequences, and the second, she would do everything possible to expose the truth and free her family from the clutches of those who held them captive. But what Olivia didn't know was that her actions had set in motion a series of events that would soon shake the foundations of her world and lead her to face dangers beyond her imagination. Meanwhile, in the Thompson mansion, Richard received a call that chilled his blood. A cold voice on the other end of the line made it clear that time was running out, and that if Olivia didn't fulfill her part of the deal, the consequences would be devastating. The storm that was approaching was about to break, and no one was prepared for what would come next. The following days passed in a whirlwind of frantic activity and growing tension. Olivia and Ethan immersed themselves in desperate investigation, seeking any clue that could help them unravel the web of corruption and threats enveloping the Thompson family. They established a base of operations in Ethan's small apartment, transforming the living room into an improvised research center. Papers, documents, and notes covered every available surface, while a large board on the wall connected names, dates, and events with colored threads. Olivia had decided to keep her distance from her family, communicating only the minimum necessary to avoid suspicion. Each call from her parents or Alexander was a test for her nerves, forcing her to maintain a facade of normalcy while her world crumbled around her one afternoon. While reviewing some financial documents they had managed to obtain, Ethan let out an exclamation of surprise. "Olivia, look at this," he said, pointing to a series of transactions. "There's a pattern here, large sums of money moving through shell companies, all connected somehow to a corporation called Nexus Global." Olivia leaned over the papers, her heart racing. Nexus Global. "I've heard that name before. I think my father mentioned they were interested in a partnership." "This could be the key," Ethan said, his eyes shining with determination. "If we can follow the money trail, maybe we can expose the whole operation." But the deeper they dug, the more dangerous everything became. Olivia began to notice suspicious cars parked near Ethan's apartment, and on more than one occasion had the unsettling feeling of being followed. One night, as they were returning from the library where they had been investigating, Ethan suddenly took Olivia's hand and dragged her into an alley. "What's wrong?" she whispered, alarmed. "We're being followed," Ethan murmured, his face tense. "The same black car has been behind us since we left the library." Olivia felt fear tightening her chest. "What do we do?" "For now, stay out of sight," Ethan replied. "But Olivia, this confirms we're onto something big. They're scared of what we might uncover." That night, back in the apartment, they made a difficult but necessary decision. They needed professional help. Ethan had a contact, an investigative journalist named Jake who had worked on corporate corruption cases before the next day. They met with Jake in a discreet cafe on the outskirts of the city. He was a middle-aged man with sharp eyes that seemed to capture every detail. "What you're telling me is pure dynamite," Jake said after hearing their story. "If we can prove it, we'll not only expose Nexus Global, but we could unmask a corruption network that extends to the highest levels of government. Will you help us?" Olivia asked, hope mixing with fear in her voice. Jake nodded slowly. "I will, but you must understand the risks. Once we start pulling on this thread, there's no turning back. And the people involved will do whatever is necessary to stay in the shadows." Olivia and Ethan exchanged glances. At that moment, without needing words, they reaffirmed their mutual commitment, and to the truth. "We're prepared," Ethan said, taking Olivia's hand under the table. The following days were an emotional roller coaster of discoveries. With Jake's help, they managed to access confidential documents and testimonies from former Nexus Global employees. Each new piece of information revealed a darker and more sinister picture than they had imagined. But as they got closer to the truth, the dangers also increased. One night, Olivia received a call from her mother. "Olivia, please, you have to come home," Ellen pleaded, her voice trembling. "Your father, he's received threats. They're saying that if we don't comply with the deal, if you don't marry Alexander, they're going to..." Ellen's voice broke, unable to finish the sentence. Olivia felt the world stopping around her. "Mom, listen to me," she said, trying to stay calm. "We're close to solving this. We just need a little more time. Tell Dad to hold on, not to do anything drastic." But even as she spoke those words, Olivia knew time was running out. The wedding to Alexander was scheduled for the following week, and the pressure from all sides was suffocating. That night, as Olivia and Ethan worked frantically to organize the evidence they had gathered, they heard a noise outside the apartment. Before they could react, the door burst open. 3 men dressed in black entered, their faces covered and their intentions clear. Ethan instinctively stood in front of Olivia, but was quickly subdued by 2 of the intruders. The third, evidently the leader, approached Olivia. "Miss Thompson," he said in a cold voice that chilled her blood, "I think it's time we had a conversation about your family's future and your own." Olivia looked at Ethan, who was struggling in vain against his captors, and then at the documents scattered around the room, the culmination of days of work and hope. At that moment, she knew they had crossed a point of no return. "I'm not going anywhere with you," she said, her voice surprisingly firm, despite the fear consuming her. The man let out a humorless laugh. "I'm afraid, dear, that you don't have a choice." Just when it seemed all was lost, there was a commotion in the hallway. The door burst open again, and to everyone's astonishment, Alexander Pearson entered, followed by several men who appeared to be bodyguards. "Let her go," Alexander ordered, his voice loaded with an authority Olivia had never heard before. "Now." The leader of the intruders seemed to hesitate for a moment, assessing the situation. Finally, he gestured to his men to release Ethan and step back. "This isn't over," he warned before quickly leaving the apartment with his henchmen. Olivia ran to Ethan, hugging him tightly, before turning to Alexander, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and suspicion. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice mixing relief and distrust. "How did you know where to find us?" Alexander stepped forward, his face a mask of concern and determination. "I've been watching you, Olivia. To protect you. I knew you were in danger, but I didn't imagine they would go this far." Ethan stepped between Olivia and Alexander, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Protect her? Or make sure she didn't discover too much?" Alexander sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I assure you I'm on your side. Things are more complicated than they seem." "Then explain it," Olivia demanded, "because from where I'm standing, it looks like you and my father are willing to sell my future to save your own interests." Alexander looked around, noticing the documents and notes scattered throughout the room. "I see you've been busy," he murmured. Then, raising his voice, he continued, "This isn't a safe place to talk. We need to leave now. I can take you to a place where you'll be safe and where I can explain everything to you." Olivia and Ethan exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Olivia nodded. "All right," she said, "but if this is some kind of trick—" "It's not," Alexander interrupted. "You have my word." They quickly gathered the most important documents and followed Alexander out of the building. An armored car was waiting for them, with 2 more bodyguards next to it. The journey was tense and silent, with Olivia and Ethan constantly watching for any sign of being followed. After what seemed like an eternity, they arrived at the outskirts of the city, stopping in front of a modest-looking but well-protected house. "It's a safe house," Alexander explained, as he guided them inside. "No one knows of its existence except my closest circle." Once inside, in what appeared to be a study, Alexander indicated that they should sit down. He took a deep breath, as if preparing to reveal a long-kept secret. "What you're about to hear will change everything you think you know," he began. "The truth is that I too have been investigating Nexus Global and the corruption network surrounding it, but from the inside—" Olivia leaned forward, her eyes wide with surprise. "What do you mean?" "My family," Alexander continued, "has been under Nexus's control for generations. Like your father, Olivia, my ancestors made deals that tied us to this organization. But unlike your father, I decided years ago that I was going to put an end to this, no matter the cost." Ethan frowned. "So all of this, the engagement, was part of your plan?" Alexander nodded slowly. In part, I knew the Thompsons were in Nexus's crosshairs. I proposed the marriage as a way to buy time and gain access. But I never imagined I'd find someone like you, Olivia. Someone willing to fight against all of this. Olivia stood up, pacing the room as she processed this new information. Why didn't you tell me before? Why keep up this whole charade? Because every move I make is being watched, Alexander replied. I had to keep up appearances, even with you, especially with you. If Nexus suspected for a moment that I was trying to overthrow them, he left the sentence unfinished, but the implied danger was clear to everyone. Ethan, who had been listening in silence, finally spoke. What do you know about the threats to Olivia's family? Are they real? Alexander's expression darkened. Very real. Nexus doesn't make empty threats. If we don't meet their demands, the consequences will be severe. A heavy silence fell over the room as they all absorbed the gravity of the situation. Olivia turned to Alexander, her eyes shining with a mixture of determination and fear. What can we do? She asked. We've gathered evidence. But if Nexus is as powerful as you say... Alexander stood up, approaching a desk and pulling out a USB drive. This, he said, holding it up, contains information that could dismantle Nexus's entire operation. Financial records, compromising emails, even recordings of high-level meetings. I've been collecting this for years, waiting for the right moment to use it. And you think that moment is now? Ethan asked, skeptical. With the evidence you've gathered, plus what I have, we could have a real chance of exposing everything, Alexander replied. But we have to act fast. Nexus already knows something is going on, and they'll stop at nothing to silence us. Olivia looked at Ethan, then at Alexander. The magnitude of what they were about to do was overwhelming, but she also felt a spark of hope igniting in her chest. What's the plan? She asked, her voice firm. Alexander smiled, a smile that mixed determination and a touch of danger. We're going to hit them where it hurts most, their public reputation. I have contacts in the media who are willing to publish all the evidence, but we need to do it in a way that Nexus can't stop or discredit. The gala, Olivia said suddenly, an idea forming in her mind. Nexus Global's annual charity gala. It's in 3 days. All the important figures in the city will be there. Alexander nodded, impressed. Exactly. It's the perfect stage. We can make the revelation live, in front of everyone who matters. It will be impossible to ignore or cover up. Ethan, however, looked worried. It's risky. We'll be surrounded by people loyal to Nexus if something goes wrong. It's a risk we have to take, Olivia said, her voice full of conviction. It's our best chance to put an end to all of this, to free our families, and who knows how many more people from Nexus's clutches. The three looked at each other, the weight of the decision they were making palpable in the air. Finally, Alexander extended his hand. So, are we in this together? Olivia put her hand on Alexander's without hesitation. After a moment of hesitation, Ethan did the same. Together, they said in unison. As they planned the details of their bold move, none of them could imagine the surprises and betrayals that awaited them at the gala. The fate of their families and possibly the entire city hung by a thread, and the next 72 hours would determine whether their brave plan would lead them to victory or total ruin. The night of Nexus Global's annual charity gala finally arrived. The Grand Plaza Hotel shimmered with lights and the bustle of high society. Limousines and luxury cars paraded in front of the main entrance, dropping off their occupants dressed in their finest attire. Olivia arrived on Alexander's arm, her heart pounding with a mix of determination and fear. She wore a stunning red dress that contrasted with her pale skin, her hair swept up in an elegant chignon. To the casual observer, they looked like the perfect couple, a society photographer's dream. But beneath that facade of normalcy, both were tense, aware of what was at stake that night. "Are you ready?" Alexander whispered as they climbed the entrance stairs. Olivia nodded imperceptibly. "As ready as I can be." Inside, The main ballroom was a spectacle of opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, tables covered with white silk tablecloth stretched across the space, and waiters glided between guests offering champagne and canapes. Olivia scanned the crowd, looking for familiar faces. She saw her parents in a corner, talking with some executives. Her mother's gaze met hers for a moment, a mixture of relief and concern in her eyes. "Ethan is in position," Alexander murmured, discreetly pointing towards the service area. Indeed, Olivia could see Ethan, dressed as a waiter, skillfully blending in among the staff. The plan was simple in theory, but dangerously complex in execution. Ethan, from his position among the staff, would be in charge of hacking the hotel's audio-visual system. Alexander would give the signal. And at that moment, all the evidence they had gathered would be projected onto the large screens arranged around the ballroom for the Nexus Global CEO's speech. Olivia took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. Every minute that passed felt like an eternity. They greeted acquaintances, exchanged empty courtesies, all the while aware of the weight of the USB drive. Alexander carried in the inner pocket of his jacket. Suddenly, Olivia felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find herself face to face with her father, Richard Thompson. "Olivia," he said, his voice a mixture of relief and tension. "We need to talk, in private." Before she could respond, Richard guided her towards a small balcony away from the bustle of the party. Alexander followed them with his gaze, but kept his distance, vigilant. Once outside, Richard turned to his daughter, his eyes filled with an emotion Olivia couldn't decipher. "Daughter, I know you're angry with me, and you have every right to be," he began, "but I need you to understand that everything I've done, I did thinking of protecting our family." Olivia felt a mixture of anger and sadness. "Protect us, Dad? You put us in danger. You tied us to dangerous people." Richard lowered his gaze, guilt evident on his face. "I know, and I've been trying to find a way out. In fact," he paused, looking around to make sure no one was listening, "I think I've found a way to free us from Nexus." Olivia felt her heart racing. Could it be that her father had been working on his own solution all this time? "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to stay calm. Richard moved closer, lowering his voice. "I've been gathering information, evidence of Nexus's illegal activities. With this, we could—" But before he could finish, the balcony door burst open. Alexander entered, his face a mask of urgency. "Olivia, it's time," he said, ignoring Richard's presence. "Ethan is ready." Richard looked between his daughter and Alexander, confusion evident on his face. "What is he talking about, Olivia? What's going on?" Olivia felt the world slowing down around her. At that moment, she had to make a crucial decision: trust the plan they had elaborated with Alexander and Ethan, or give a chance to what her father was proposing. Looking into her father's eyes, she saw regret and determination. But she also remembered all the lies, all the secrets. Could she really trust him now? "I'm sorry, Dad," she finally said, "but we already have a plan in motion." With that, she turned to Alexander and nodded. He took out his phone and sent a quick message, presumably to Ethan. Seconds later, the lights in the ballroom flickered. The large screens, which until then had been showing the Nexus Global logo, went dark for an instant. When they came back on, they began to display documents, emails, and recordings exposing all of Nexus's corruption and crimes. A collective gasp ran through the crowd. Olivia, Alexander, and Richard quickly returned to the main ballroom, just in time to see chaos unfolding. The CEO of Nexus Global, a man named Victor Reed, took the stage, desperately trying to calm the crowd and discredit what they were seeing. But it was too late. The journalists present were already broadcasting live, capturing every detail of the exposure Olivia searched for. Ethan in the crowd, finding him near the emergency exit, ready to escape if things got ugly. Their gazes met, and for a moment they shared a triumphant smile, but their victory was short-lived. Suddenly, a loud crash was heard. The main doors of the ballroom burst open, and a group of armed men entered, their faces covered and their intentions clearly hostile. Panic spread through the room like wildfire. Guests screamed and ran in all directions, seeking an exit. Amidst the chaos, Olivia saw Ethan being intercepted by two of the armed men. "Ethan!" she shouted, trying to make her way through the frantic crowd. Alexander grabbed her arm, pulling her towards a side exit. "Olivia, we have to go, it's too dangerous." But Olivia resisted, her eyes fixed on Ethan, who was struggling against his captors. "We can't leave him." At that moment, an amplified voice resonated above. The chaos. It was Victor Reed, the CEO of Nexus Global, who had taken the microphone on stage. "Silence!" he roared, and surprisingly, the crowd calmed, perhaps from shock or fear. "This," he continued, pointing to the screen still showing the incriminating evidence, "is a desperate attempt to discredit Nexus Global, but I assure you, we have the responsible parties." With a gesture, he pointed to where Ethan was being held. Then his gaze fixed directly on Olivia and Alexander. "And it seems the masterminds behind this operation are trying to escape. Miss Thompson, Mr. Pearson, I suggest you turn yourselves in peacefully." Olivia felt the world stopping around her. Everything they had fought for, everything they had risked, seemed to be crumbling in a matter of seconds. It was then that Richard Thompson stepped forward, placing himself between Reed and his daughter. "Wait!" he shouted, his voice echoing in the now silent ballroom. "I am responsible for all of this." A murmur of surprise ran through the crowd. Olivia looked at her father, incredulous. "Dad, what are you doing?" Richard looked at her for a moment, a mixture of determination and regret in his eyes. Then he turned to Reed and the audience. "The evidence you've seen is real, but it wasn't gathered by my daughter or Alexander Pearson. It was me who collected it over years, waiting for the right moment to expose the truth about Nexus Global." Reed seemed momentarily disconcerted, but quickly regained his composure. "Richard, old friend, have you gone mad? Do you really expect anyone to believe that?" "I have proof," Richard replied, pulling a USB drive from his pocket. "It's all here, including recordings of our private conversations, Victor conversations that I'm sure you don't want to be made public." Reed's face visibly paled. For a moment, the silence in the ballroom was absolute, broken only by the sound of cameras frantically photographing the scene. Alexander took advantage of the distraction to approach the men holding Ethan. With a quick movement, he managed to free him, and the three reunited next to Olivia. "Are you okay?" Olivia whispered to Ethan, taking his hand. He nodded, though he looked shaken. "Thanks to your father, I can't believe he did that." "Neither can I," Olivia murmured, her gaze fixed on Richard, who was still facing Reed. Suddenly the doors to the ballroom opened again. This time it was the police who entered, led by a serious-looking detective. "Victor Reed," the detective announced, "you're under arrest on multiple charges of fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. We have a search warrant for Nexus Global offices and arrest warrants for several of your executives." Reed, seeing that he was cornered, tried to flee, but was quickly subdued by the officers. As they handcuffed him, he shouted at Richard, "This isn't over, Thompson, you'll fall with me." Richard, however, had already approached the detective. "Detective, I'm also implicated in this. I'm willing to turn myself in and fully cooperate with the investigation." Olivia ran to her father, tears in her eyes. "Dad, no!" Richard hugged her tightly. "It's okay, my child. It's time I face the consequences of my actions. But you're safe now, everyone. That's all that matters." As the police began to take statements and secure the scene, Olivia found herself at the center of a whirlwind of emotions. She looked at Ethan, who gave her a reassuring smile, and then at Alexander, whose face showed a mixture of relief and concern. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alexander put a hand on her shoulder. "Now we start to rebuild. Nexus Global will fall, that's for sure, but the road ahead won't be easy." Ethan took Olivia's hand. "But we'll face it together," he said firmly. Olivia nodded, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and hope. As she watched her father being escorted by the police, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. But she also knew that for the first time in a long time, she had the freedom to choose her own path. In the months that followed, the city was shaken by the revelations about Nexus Global. Dozens of arrests were made, implicating politicians, businessmen, and high society figures. Richard Thompson, true to his word, fully cooperated with the authorities, which earned him a reduced sentence. Olivia, finally freed from the weight of family expectations and secrets, decided to pursue her dream of being a writer. Her first book, a novel based on the events she had lived through, became an instant success. Ethan, with Olivia's support, opened his own photography gallery, where he exhibited images that captured the transformation of the city and its people after the fall of Nexus. Alexander, for his part, worked tirelessly to reform the Pearson companies, turning them into a model of transparency and corporate responsibility. A year after the fateful gala, Olivia visited her father in prison. Richard, though aged by the circumstances, seemed at peace. "I'm proud of you, daughter," he told her, taking her hands across the visiting table. "You found your path, your voice. That's all I ever wanted for you." Olivia smiled, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Dad, for everything, even for the mistakes, because they led me to where I am now." As she left the prison, Olivia met Ethan, who was waiting for her. As they walked together under the afternoon sun, Olivia reflected on the incredible journey she had lived. She had begun as a reluctant bride, trapped in a web of lies and obligations. Now she was a free woman, in charge of her destiny, with a bright future ahead and true love by her side. As they walked away, Olivia knew that, although the road would not always be easy, she had the strength and courage to face any challenge the future might bring. Her destiny, once chained, was now hers to forge.